Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CS Cyber. I'm Chad.
I'm Sean.
And today we're continuing our NIST 800-171 discussion, and we're actually wrapping up with the last objective, Objective 15, which is System and Information Integrity.
Yep, absolutely.
So this one's like right up your alley, I feel like.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's kind of how we started here.
Right. So System and Information Integrity, it's really about ensuring that organizations' systems are protected against unauthorized changes, malicious software, integrity compromise. It's all about, really protecting your data and the systems that house your data.
Yep, absolutely. Probably one of the most challenging ones too.
It is. It's all the devices out there that are storing your things, right? So the System and Information Integrity family group, it includes requirements for monitoring, detecting, and mitigating system threats. So we're talking EDR, SIM, all of those things, right?
Yep.
So just a couple key requirements: continuous system monitoring. So you want to implement tools and processes that detect system vulnerabilities and security events across your organization, just not in your server environment. Malware protections, security alerts and flaw remediations, and then really like data integrity protections, right? I mean, how do you know when you're going to that database that it hasn't been changed?
Right.
So
those are four really big ones. And even if you made it to 3, 4 is, probably one of the most challenging ones. The flaw remediation or misconfigurations, as I like to kind of point them out, that's probably one of the biggest areas. We still see a lot of people that want to just install it themselves and configure it themselves, and they want to watch a bunch of YouTube videos and things like that, and that will really get them in trouble really fast.
Right. So let's talk about that step, right? So you get it deployed. It could be misconfigured, but then let's say it's misconfigured and then it's sending you all these alerts, right? Like, what do you do with that aspect of it, right? I mean, you're an IT guy trying to do this. What about the downstreams? How do you manage that? How do you monitor that? How do you?
Well, I guess it starts with, the acquisition of the appropriate software, SaaS service or hardware, right? So there's the vendor aspect of just making sure that you've chosen the right thing, because we've talked about it before on the podcast. There's just so many solutions out there that you can easily choose the wrong thing. So you can choose the wrong thing, right? And think that that's what you got sold is what you need. 2, you can receive that piece of equipment and then just misconfigure it, right? So you're going to go through some process, either working with the vendor through their startup procedures or whatever. And maybe it gets installed correctly on day one, but then over time there's a delta that keeps occurring, right? Where there's changes and it gets maybe out of configuration. Perfect example is maybe you do have the professional services and you do pay to have that piece of equipment installed, but then over time that consultant leaves and it's up to you, right? And then over time you make it less. Right.
It's not really a set it and forget it type thing.
No, none of this stuff is. And especially when we start talking about EDR and all that, it definitely gets into that.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit. I mean, where I was kind of going with like the vendor thing, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because in my practice, when I go out and do assessments, I see a lot of vendor sprawl, right? It's not.
Yeah.
I in my opinion, I think it's better to have a cohesive solution, especially if you have a small team supporting it so that they understand it versus 5 different products that you're using maybe 10% of.
Right.
So, all right, let's just list off the subcontrols. There's 7 subcontrols here that you'll want to take a look at. Everything from identifying, protecting, monitoring, implementing, performing periodic scans, things like that. So make sure you read the 7 subcontrols there. And let's just jump into like the practical examples. I mean, we do a lot of EDR, we do a lot of SIM, we do a lot of vulnerability scanning and patch management. Those are really like the practical examples that I have listed here. So you want to talk a little bit about EDR and SIM? And
yeah, we'll start right with EDR. Probably, more so now than what we saw like 5 years ago, where people were still running things like McAfee and Norton antivirus and stuff like that, right? So I think most of the world has figured out that things evolved, and EDR is the nomenclature now for well, primarily like ransomware protection,
Right.
essentially is what we're talking about. And then SIEM, SIEM really, or SIEM, however people call it, tomato. SIEM really evolved over time to, much like vulnerability scanning as well, that's right underneath this, was more of one of those, like you didn't have to have it back then. It was these were more optional things.
Right.
There was a lot of talk even before SIEM about syslogging.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people used like Kiwi syslogger out there,
You could never get anything out of that. It was like so
right.
challenging.
Well, it kept it. It checked a box.
It did.
Right.
It did.
It definitely checked a box. So, SIEM and EDR are at the core of our organization at Secure Cyber. Anything, even for our smallest package, you have to have EDR deployed in order for us to not only try and mitigate, and respond to a ransomware threat, but to get that telemetry that we need to do what we need to do from an investigative and response perspective.
Right.
And then SIEM, right, is the entry point into our SOC. So having and this is the key point too, like having a properly configured and tuned SIEM is extremely important, right? You just can't just deploy SIEM and expect it to do its job. It would be a very expensive syslog server at that point, right? So yeah, two tools that have definitely evolved and have definitely become critical.
Yeah, so EDR is really the last line of defense on all of the endpoints, and really the first thing we deploy when we respond to incident, like to an IR investigation, correct?
Yeah, it could be the last line. It could also be the first line,
right?
Depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. Just regular vulnerability scanning. I see this out in the field a lot. People are doing it. Some people aren't doing it. We have solutions that are this is another one of those things that have come down in cost dramatically, right? I mean, that used to be very expensive. There's very cost-effective solutions to do continuous vulnerability scanning, and it really is doing like asset inventory for you too. So if you're struggling with that, definitely like give us a call, reach out to us. There's a lot of solutions out there, but it's something you have to do. Like you have to know what your footprint is, and then a patch management process, right? I see some people that are really good at this. I see a lot of people that struggle with this. But there's more to patch out there than just the monthly Windows updates. I'll just leave that at that. There's a lot more to patch.
Right. I mean, we've run into organizations that patch daily. It's that important to them. Some of those organizations are in life safety type situations. So.
Right. And just depending on your organization, I mean, auto updates it may work for you, right? Then you may need, if you have a larger organization, a more structured, methodical approach to what you're doing. But definitely get something that works for you and you can roll out consistently.
Agree.
So let's just kind of talk about some products, right? I mean, products. We're a Fortinet shop. Yep.
So FortiEDR, probably one of the best and least known endpoint detection and responses. Everybody's familiar with the what I call the big two, right? CrowdStrike and SentinelOne. So FortiEDR is definitely right up there. I mean, from a SIEM perspective, we're a Securonics shop. We as an organization don't look at these tools as individual silos. So we are an integrator solution. So our platform includes tools that all talk to each other. So nothing is ever introduced into our platform that doesn't talk.
Right.
It doesn't feed the other.
Right. And that's huge. I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about as far as like disparate tools, right? I mean, it's so painful for if you're trying to manage IT and then manage the security to go from one tool to, oh, this gave me some piece of information. Now I have to go correlate it over here. And that's tough. That's tough for a small team.
Yeah, I've worked on a small team in local government, and that's the everyday, and it's the worst.
Yep. All right. So policies, you'll want a system monitoring policy, incident response plan, patch and vulnerability management policy, malware. It says malware protection policy, but that's maybe like your endpoint security posture policy, or
right.
I forget the actual name of the policy. There's like a bajillion policies, but
yeah, right.
Yeah, so you'll want to look at your policies, and just some common challenges around this. I'd say patching is one of the biggest one. Just knowing what you have out there, scheduling it, being able to like cycle through those things. I think like just alert overload. If you have something that's configured improperly, or to your point, if it's configured properly and you're just getting a ton of alerts, like you don't you don't know, you can't take action on those, right? So
yeah, one of the worst feelings is thinking you have everything and you've scanned, you've remediated, you've patched, and then you get hit with ransomware because there was one device that you forgot about.
Right. So I think that's all I got for this episode. I think next week we'll be finishing up the NIST series, and we'll just do kind of a recap episode. And then we'll move on to something else. So
yeah. So next week we will talk about what that next topic is going to be, and I think it's going to be very. I think you're going to want to tune in even more and learn something new. So stay tuned next week for what that is.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I am too.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you next time.